Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about how short Fat Otaku has decided to, you guessed it, claim that both sides are equally bad and thus equally responsible for the second assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Because both sides are equally bad, no matter how much worse the left actually is. This particular conversation started with Dev quote tweeting a leftoid, responding by stating, quote, "Trump absolutely uses the rhetoric of a dictator, and he is plenty responsible for turning up the heat. But let's not pretend that many Democrat figures didn't do the same, especially in the wake of George Floyd. Every prominent Dem was saying, 'Rise up, go riot' in 2020. So to give Dev some credit here, he does at least give Democrats part of the blame with regards to this whole situation. But yes, the fact that he wants to argue that Trump is responsible for turning up the heat as well means that he is essentially arguing that Trump is at least somewhat responsible for this second assassination attempt against Donald Trump. He is in fact blaming both sides for why this assassination attempt happened. Dev also decided to add to this by stating, quote, "There is plenty of blame to go around on all sides. But to be honest, if you want to blame anybody, how about starting with the people who are actually doing the shooting and the looting and the rioting and the burning down of buildings and breaking into Capitol buildings. Start there." Note that Dev is already starting to move the goalposts ever so slightly and subtly with the hopes that you do not notice. Because no one reasonably believes that Nancy Pelosi was physically there amongst the rioters back in 2020. And so he's now saying we should start only with the people that were actually on the ground, rather than the politicians actively egging them on and encouraging them by arguing that their opposition is literally Hitler. It is worth noting for the record that Dev is not going to extend this position to Trump. For example, Dev believes that Trump's tweet from back in 2021 that got him banned, the tweet that Trump says, quote, "The 75 million great Americans who voted for me, America first and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." Dev believes that this is a legitimate example of Trump inciting violence, that Trump is to be held responsible for daring to utter these heinous words. This is the kind of rhetoric that Dev deems to be dictatorial in nature and Trump turning up the heat, so to speak. At least that is the case until you start to seriously question how this actually incites violence, at which point he will inevitably do what he always does and become very curiously and conspicuously silent. I should also mention that Dev, an individual who has obviously never ever incited violence at all, is the same individual who believes that Trump is literally the worst president in US history. Not just worse than George W. Bush in recent history, but also in US history period, meaning he's worse than Woodrow Wilson, the man most responsible for bringing the Klan back. I should also mention that Dev is the exact same individual who believes that if you think that the election in 2020 was stolen or fraudulent in any way, such as, for example, the FBI and other government agencies conspiring to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story by falsely presenting it as fake Russian propaganda, a form of misinformation utilized to make sure that their candidate wins, which for the record is considered a form of election fraud, something that even Dev himself has admitted. Well, if you believe that, then you must start a civil war in the US, and if you don't, well, you're just a cuck. But don't worry, this is not insightful rhetoric at all on the part of Dev, and if you disagree in any way whatsoever, you're just being bad faith, and we can't have opinions like that now, can we? Which is why Dev's free speech platforms on Discord and YouTube will ban you for such speech. But wait, it gets even better, because Dev actually had the audacity to try to pretend that he isn't blaming Trump, asking, quote, "Where am I blaming him?" in response to a person pointing out that Dev is in fact blaming Trump. Since Dev wants to pretend to be the dumbest motherfucker there ever was, allow me to quote the exact part where Dev does in fact blame Trump, just to make it as clear as possible how much of a dishonest liar he is. Quote, "Trump absolutely uses the rhetoric of a dictator, and he is plenty responsible for turning up the heat." That, Dev, is the part where you blamed Trump. It gets even better because Dev even goes so far as to later admit that yes, he is in fact lying further on down the thread. As one user states, quote, Trump uses the rhetoric of a dictator, justifies the left-wing rhetoric that motivated the attack, based on present evidence at least. By saying it, you're at least stumbling into saying it's fine because Trump is a wannabe dictator. To which Dev responds by stating, quote, perhaps he should not use that rhetoric. You know, immediately after pretending that he wasn't blaming Trump before. So yeah, this is yet more blatant proof that Dev argues in bad faith. But to make matters even worse, this is Dev openly admitting that he also believes that it is completely morally justified to try to assassinate Donald Trump. And no, this is not the only time in this whole situation that Dev decided to put his own foot in his mouth, as he later responds to another commentator by stating, quote, I think it actually proves my point. The Democrats seem to have smartened up and turned down their own rhetoric, as it has been for years. The MAGAs have not. To which another commentator responds by stating, quote, he's a threat to our democracy. He uses Hitler's language, isn't toning it down as much as people might want to forget those were said. To which Dev responds by stating, quote, the other question is, though, are these accurate statements? So there are two things I need to bring up with regards to Dev's comments here. The first is that he is yet again moving the goalposts, because someone has absolutely pointed out that no, the Democrats haven't actually toned down their rhetoric. Dev has been caught in a blatant lie that he cannot escape from by maintaining his former position, and so he decides to switch up his little tactics to try to defend himself. In this case, by instead moving on to arguing that it's good, actually, that the Democrats are continuing to use the insightful language that Dev outright denied they were using only a few moments ago, because it's the truth. But that leads me to the second point of, is it really the truth though? I am very curious to find the exact quote that Dev wants to use of Trump arguing that there is a certain race that is the racial embodiment of capitalism that is systemically oppressing everyone else. You know, something that was a main cornerstone of what Hitler argued. Because the only people I see doing that tend to be left of the political compass. Just like how I don't exactly see Trump arguing for affirmative action the way that Hitler historically did, or arguing in favor of collective farming the way that Hitler historically did, or arguing in favor of abolishing private property rights the way that Hitler historically did. No, those seem to all be leftist talking points. My point is, Dev's claims that Trump is literally Hitler is simply nonsense. But wait, there is still yet more of Dev making a fool of himself in this whole situation, as seen with this particular conversation in which Dev states in response to Midwest's Strongest Soldier, I haven't looked into this event yet, but I do recall hearing the first shooter was just a schizo kid, yeah. To which Skyblade responds by stating, quote, I haven't looked into this event yet, but I'm blaming the victim anyway, even though 100% of the violence has come from my side of the aisle. To which Midwest's Strongest Soldier responds by stating, quote, not as simple as that so far. The second one has a much stronger causal link than the first. It seems so far the people who are making the main accusations against Trump is Thailand schizo Swan Marcus and some columns so far. I haven't seen much from Destiny yet other than bait. To which Skyblade responds by stating, quote, Dev is literally here blaming Trump for them shooting him, with vague rhetoric of a dictator talk for an event he admits that he hasn't even looked into. He's a fucking violence apologist and he should be called out for it. To which Dev decides to provide a quote tweet of himself blaming both sides, to which Skyblade responds by stating, quote, yes, again, the both sides. It's not Trump's fault that Dems are murderous lunatics. He isn't using dictator rhetoric. Your he's a threat to humanity and democracy people are. Our side isn't shooting anyone. You're blaming Trump because your friends want him dead. I feel I should emphasize the fact once again that Dev has openly admitted in this particular thread that he's already stating his opinions despite having looked hardly at all into this whole matter, which is especially ironic considering how famous Dev is for holding off as long as possible in the official hopes of letting all the facts roll in before he states his position. So the fact that he has decided to weigh in on this matter while openly admitting that he hasn't even bothered to look into it at all is yet another glowing example of Dev's bias, resulting in such extreme double standards that there is no reasonable way to come to any other conclusion than Dev is simply arguing in bad faith. I believe I've said all that really needs to be said on this particular topic, so I'll finish by stating that I will of course be leaving links in the description below to the sources that I have used, so you can check them out for yourself if you should so desire. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.